Can you believe I'm actually filming this on Christmas Day? I'm not exaggerating, I'm being serious. Look, you even see it on my phone, December 25th. And what makes a better gift than telling you what the 10 best albums of this year, 2023, were? Now remember, there is one rule to this video, and that is that all of my picks are objectively the best picks of the year. These are the best albums of the year, and if any list disagrees with that, just know that they are wrong. They are incorrect. So just keep that in mind as we go through. And if you don't believe me, I have a Spotify playlist in the description with a song from each one of these albums to prove that I am right and these are the best albums. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin, and we'll start at number 10. At number 10, I have Waterparks with their album Intellectual Property. This thing is so consistent, it has hardly any skips, and I just love how thematically it's so on the nose. It feels like it really communicates to you what it's about, what it's feeling. I just think that's really, really awesome. I just found it to be a great entry point to the band if you're unfamiliar with their sound. Got a little bit of everything that they do right, but I will say the highs of this album don't really match the highs of their previous two albums, which I think are just insane. So those albums are worth a listen if you haven't listened to them yet. With that being said, though, I think this album does a great job of putting its best foot forward, especially for new fans, which it seems like the band has picked up a lot of recently. Dorian Electra is so back for album number 9, which is their album Fanfare. This thing is fiery and hot. You can absolutely tell the songs that Dorian put the most love into. The highlights just go so crazy on this thing. It's got a lot of charisma and character. There's just so much to like about this album, and I would say it's definitely the most palatable Dorian Electra album I think that I've listened to so far by them, so highly recommend checking it out. For number 8, I did that thing again where the last album to squeeze its way into this list takes the number 8 spot, and it goes to Troye Sivan's Something to Give Each Other. Despite sneaking its way in at 11:59 when the deadline was midnight, this album has just so many catchy melodies that I couldn't help but fall for. The production is really over the top, but I like it a lot. It kind of makes me feel the things I felt about that 1975 album last year. I think above all else, though, it's really vulnerable, and it shows Troye Sivan's skill in delivering sentimentality in his work. I would definitely say it's a strong comeback after a 5-year hiatus, and I really hope that we don't have to wait another 5 years for the next album. Next up is Tinashe at number 7 with her short but sweet project BB Angel, and I just adore so much how this album reminds me of everything I loved about her mixtapes when I first started listening to her music, over a decade ago. This feels like a real return to form, and it's like the moment she says, "This is me, I am here now, and this is my moment." I don't know. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I can tell you that this album, in a lot of ways, redefines the space in R&B that she takes up, and her contemporaries are going to have to do a lot of work to keep up, because for several years now, I think Tinashe has really been ahead of the curve in that female-led R&B space, and I cannot wait to see what she continues to bring to the table. The vibes are absolutely immaculate at number 6 with Uchis' Red Moon and Venus. I just love the way that she takes ideas from her Isolation album that I kind of liked and really puts them together into this awesome sounding album. She refines it in a way that this album really feels like it's in no rush, it's in no hurry. It just wants you to sit back and listen and relax. Uchis serenades you as she kind of talks out loud about her emotions and works through those feelings and comes to terms with who she is in the end and ends up a happier woman. And in the end, isn't that what we're all looking to do? All right, are you ready for the top 5? At number 5, we have Daniel Caesar with his first album in 3 years, which is Never Enough. I think after some mixed reception on his last album, Daniel did a really good job of kind of going back to what made his music really have the character that it had. He does what he excels at best and kind of takes ideas from his previous 2 albums and really puts them all together into an album that sounds to me the most him. And while I think it's a very listener-friendly journey, Never Enough still takes time to be very introspective and look back at how Daniel got to where he is today. It takes a chance to look in the rearview mirror a little bit while still pushing Daniel Caesar's sound forward and not insisting too much upon itself, which I think works really well for him. Okay, number 4 has to be the biggest surprise on the list, and it is Olivia Rodrigo's Guts. Not that didn't sound right. It's Guts by Olivia Rodrigo. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't expect this, but the growth between albums is astounding. Like, it's so insane that I almost feel like it retroactively makes Sour, her debut album, sound worse because of just how much better the ideas and themes and issues that Olivia Rodrigo is going through, how she presents them in this album. I think there's something about how self-aware it feels and how ridiculous she knows it sounds that makes the album kind of extra cute to me. But above all else, it's just fun to listen to. It's fun to sing along, and I really love the vocal tricks and inflections that Olivia does with her voice and her funny deliveries. Like, the album is just really entertaining, and it breaks out of those pop norms that a lot of artists in her space kind of typically fall into. Yeah, I just don't know anyone else who's doing what she does better than her right now, and I can't wait to see what's next. I hope she stays on top because right now there's no competition in my opinion. Now, Don Toliver should be less of a surprise at the number 3 spot with his album Lovesick. I was actually really surprised when I got my year-end Spotify Wrapped and it had 4 of the 5 songs in it being from this album. I just really played this album a lot, and there are so many cool highlights to this album, but they all sound so unique and different. So when I think about it, it just makes sense because all these ideas that Don is trying, all these new deliveries and flows, it just comes across as growth and interesting, and it kind of keeps me surprised. And it kind of took some time to grow on me, but I'm really grateful that I stuck it out. And I know a lot of critics claim that Don doesn't really do a lot of new stuff with his voice or style, but I have to disagree because I mean, this album definitely took time to grow on me, and now it's one of my favorite albums of the year, and I'm continually impressed by the strides he makes to not just stay in a lane that, I mean, could be very successful for him. He could still do fine in that lane, but he keeps pushing his limits and boundaries and trying new things, and most of the time it lands. So kudos to him for that. I'm, pretty impressed by this album. Okay, so it's time for the final 2, and this final 2 was really tough to narrow down in the sense that it was hard to pick which one of these 2 albums I like better. But I'm giving the second spot to the Japanese House, who had a great run this year with their album In the End, It Always Does. Despite it not making number 1, I still have nothing but good things to say about this album. I would argue it was everything I wanted the Boy Genius album to be when that came out, and was pretty disappointed in that. I just feel like after listening to this album, it's like I've been through like a really emotional therapy session, and I've cried it out, and I've talked about the things that I probably shouldn't have talked about, and you walk away with that peace when you listen to this album, and I just really like that feeling, and I don't even know what to compare it to. I just know that I release a lot of tension after I've listened to it, after I've put it on for a bit, and I could just feel it come and go, and that's a really nice feeling, and I recommend it. It's kind of, calming in a way, and I really admire that about this album. So kudos to Japanese House for that one. All right, so before we move on, let's acknowledge some of the stuff that just barely missed out. We'll hit up the honorable mentions, which include Travis Scott's Utopia, some really awesome ideas I like that you can tell he's been working on for a long time, but just some of the execution was really rough. It didn't all land, and it was spotty. But there are some really cool songs on there, so I understand people who really like the album, and I understand people who are crazy about it. New Moon, man, it's like hit after hit. I don't know what it was. It just, it was kind of like the obvious number 11 spot. I really liked that album. I loved a lot about those songs and just how catchy they were and fun they were to listen to. But yeah, it just was an awkward spot, and it gets number 11. So maybe one of these days they'll make a top 10. They keep coming so close. I've got Cecile McLorin Salvant with Melusine, which I might be mispronouncing that. Melusine, one of those. Stunningly beautiful album. A nice kind of French R&B jazz fusion. Oh, it's just, I just really enjoy listening to it. I just haven't listened to it enough, and I do feel like I'm missing out quite a bit by not knowing French, and maybe people would disagree with me for feeling that way and not putting it in my top 10 for that reason, but you know, it's the one time I wish I knew French. I think it would really add to how much I enjoy the album. Caroline Polachek. I was actually shocked that this didn't make the top 10. It's a great album. It had some really cool concepts and soundscapes. It definitely almost like it creates a world around you when you listen to it, and I do really like that. I don't know. It just some of the songs kind of blended together for me. I still really enjoy those songs. It's just I couldn't put it in my top 10. I don't know why. I just couldn't get myself to do it, but still very good album. Highly recommend it. And lastly, we have Group Therapy, super balanced group with their sound and their cohesion. That's the word for that. Their cohesion. It's a cool album with a very interesting concept centered around it, and I would love to see them do more stuff. I like this album quite a bit, and I thought it was a really, really strong foot forward for them. So yeah, would love to see where they go from here. But we all know why you're here. You're not here for the honorable mentions. You're here for that number one spot. And it's just not the same if I announce it. So let me get somebody who I think it'll be funnier if they announce it. I'll be right back. All right. I need you to sit right here. And I need you to read what that number one album says.
Jude announces album.
Yeah, what is it?
100 gecs, 10,000 gecs.
Let's go! That's all I needed you for. It's genre defining. It's abrasive. It's catchy. It's funny. And you could use these for descriptors for totally different albums. But it's all packed into one, and it somehow works. And right at the start, you just get pulled into what feels like a rave in your ears. It is so awesome. It just gets crazier as it keeps going. And I think the worst thing about this album is that there isn't more mania packed into it, because you enjoy it so much and it ends up being less than half an hour and you're like, oh, that's it? Like, you want more. It just leaves you wanting more because it's so fun to listen to. And just when you think you've got a grip on what the album is supposed to sound like, what it's supposed to be sort of falling into, its lane, it just changes it up, you know? And I really love that it subverts expectations. It keeps you on your toes. And 100 gecs, who were already kind of breaking out of the mold of hyperpop and setting their own standard for it, even broke that standard, which is just awesome. Like, it's just, it's so cool. It's so cool. I mean, it's like when I was writing this down, I was like, this can't not be number one, because it brings me so much joy when the songs come on, when I talk about it, when I make Jude talk about it, and it has to take home that number one spot. I mean, it's just, it has to. Much to Jude's disappointment, it is the best album of 2023, in my opinion. Well, now that have finished telling you the list, I would say that that's a wrap. What were your favorite albums of 2023, and who are you hoping drops in 2024? Because I know some artists who I would like to see drop this year. I can't wait to dive into more music and maybe even try some new genres, because I think 2024 is the year I really break out and listen to some new stuff, really challenge myself a little bit. But 2023's picks are officially in the books. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next year. Goodbye.